about 25 years ago, I went to a charity function, okay, for homeless people for abused children in England. I think the function was in Birmingham, in the Birmingham area, okay? And I went with about 7 or 8 friends from the church that I was a member of at that time. Actually, it was about 26 years ago, okay? I'd been out of prison about a year, and I had received this invite to go to this function, and I mean, how do you say no? Why would you want to say no? And so we get in the cars and we go up to Birmingham from Gloucestershire, and we go into this really nice, really beautiful evening. And the guy who was on the stage, apparently he was quite a famous guy, but I can't remember his name. I haven't got a clue what his name is. But he made an appeal. He took to the microphone. Just hold on a minute. He took to the microphone. He came on the microphone and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make an appeal." Okay, that was inevitable. That's why we went. But I'm going to make an appeal. He said, over the next 30 or 40 minutes, you're going to see young ladies and young gentlemen in yellow t-shirts carrying a yellow bucket. All right, and they're going to be walking past you at some point in the next 20 or 30 minutes, or 30 or 40 minutes. He said, and these buckets are for your contributions to children in need. That's what it was, children in need, not abused children, children in need. Okay, so these people are going to be walking around with yellow buckets, and those buckets are for your contribution towards children in need. He then went on to say, what I want to challenge you with is, as you put your hand in your pocket or your wallet to bring out your contribution, I want you to ask yourself, how much would you want you to donate if you were the child in need? And we'd seen all these images of hungry children and homeless kids and all that kind of stuff. And this guy said, I'm going to challenge you. How much would you want you to contribute if you were one of these kids in need? And in my heart of hearts, I just said everything. I don't want a tip. I would really, in all honesty, I'd want you to give me everything, man. I have nothing. I want everything. And that was my answer. Okay. I'd been out of prison about between 9 months and a year. All right. And a part of my rehabilitation, a part of my early recovery program was to stay free from full-term pressures of responsibility as much as I can, including romantic relationships and including full-time employment. I'd been in heroin addiction for 14 and 13 and a half years. I've done 6.5 years in 27 different prisons. I was absolutely traumatized from my life, and I needed a window of healing. And it was advised that I go for 2 years without romantic relationship and without full-time employment. So I was on unemployment benefits, okay? Now, this function that we went to was a Thursday evening, okay? I had £7.50 in my pocket. In fact, I had £7.50 in the world, all right? I was receiving my weekly unemployment benefit, and I was learning how to budget, right? And I knew when this guy makes his claim, and I think to myself, well, everything. I then sit down and I think, I've got a couple of tins of beans at home, a big bag of potatoes, I've got a dozen eggs, I can get some milk. I get my unemployment. I was actually on sickness benefit because I was in addiction in an addiction rehabilitation home. Okay, so I was in the extended program of an addiction rehabilitation home. So I think to myself, I'll be all right, man. I knew I was going to run out of food by Sunday, and I knew I was getting paid Monday morning. But I thought, okay, all right, fair enough. And then we go on and we sing a few songs and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I turn around and there's a young lady walking towards me. She's got a bucket in her hand. And I put my hand in my pocket and I've got £7.50 in the world. And it was the moment of truth for me. And I thought, no, I've got to be honest. I've got to be honest. So I pulled it out in my fist and I placed it into the bottom of the bucket. Okay, so it didn't make a noise. Nobody could tell whether I was putting paper or coin in there. I just quietly placed it in the corner of the bucket, said thank you, and the girl went on her way. Everything within me wanted to say to the guy next to me, did you see what I just did? Honestly, I wanted a round of applause. I had to stop myself from saying to everybody, guess what I just done, man? Okay? That's the heart of my problem, is the problem of my heart. It's full of pride, it's full of self-seeking, it's full of selfishness. And I had to sit down and I went into a quiet time of prayer, just within amongst about 4,000 people. And I just spoke to my God and said, £7.50 there. Do with it as you will. And then carried on with the evening. And I did run out of food on Saturday afternoon. Okay, I'm all right with it. I've been hungry before. But it just so happened that on the Sunday morning, I got a call from a guy and his wife, Brendan Conboy and Heather Conboy. They phoned me, Colin, we've got this Sunday lunch ready for you, man. All you've got to do is pop up and we're going to eat till our hearts are content. Now, I was riding a bicycle at that time, a 3-speed. It was a great big wheels on it and straight handlebars and one of those little 1, 2, 3 click. It wasn't I was expecting. This guy said to me, "I've got a bike for you in my shed." So I went round to his house. I was expecting a brand new £5,000 mountain bike, and he gave me something that I think his grandma used to use, and it had 3 gears on the handlebars. And once again, in my heart, I thought, I can't ride that, man. I've got a reputation, man. Don't you know who I am? There it is again. So I took the bike, and by the time I got home and gone down a few hills, I was feeling, I couldn't have felt any happier if I'd have been driving a Porsche. Yeah, it was a rickety old thing, but it was my rickety old thing, and somebody went out of their way to think Colin might be able to use that. And so I fell in love with the bike, and that Sunday morning, when I get the phone call, the invite from Brendan and Heather, I don't have it in me to cycle up, so I make my own way there, leave the bike at home, and then we have our lunch, and at the end, Sunday lunch. And at the end of it, when we're chatting and I'm trying to stay awake, Brendan and Heather said, Colin, we've been thinking about this for a while, and we admire what you're doing, man, and how you're getting round. And they then gave me a car, fully registered in my name. They'd got the car, they cleaned it up, they'd put tax and MOT on it, and they registered it, and they said, we just want you to have this. And they gave me this car. It cost me £7.50, that car. Okay, now I don't believe that you might call that karma. You call it what you want. I call it a miracle. Okay, I call it a provisional miracle, and I don't believe the provisional miracle came my way because I gave £7.50 to children in need. But I do believe the miracle was released in my direction because I did it in secret. I didn't look for the applause of man. I didn't look to get a pat on the back. I just did the right thing for what I believe was the right reason. I was perfectly honest. I don't want a tip. All or nothing, mate. Get in or get out. And I had to live by the principle that my greedy heart screamed for. So I believe I started to see that when you go to the right places with the right people at the right times to do the right things for the right reasons, anything can happen. And that was one of my key lessons in becoming an addictions counsellor. Integrity, where nobody can see. Absolute integrity, where nobody can see. All right? Now, several years later, we fast forward then from that was in 1994. In 2002, I had been posted to South Africa, and I was asked to take charge of a drop-in for dropouts. Most of you know this story, but for those who don't, in 2002, I was sent to South Africa as a missionary. I was sponsored from England, and I was asked to take the steering wheel, if you like, of a drop-in for dropouts for homeless addicts and alcoholics in Cape Town. Okay? And in our facility, we had about 9 men of the roughest sort and 2 retired prostitutes who were retired for obvious reasons. These guys were ravaged by chemicals. I've never seen such suffering from chemical dependency. I marveled at one particular guy he came in whilst I was there, and he had the tremors, but they were giant-sized tremors, and we gave him a cup of tea with sugar in it, and just to give him something to warm him up and to satisfy his sweet tooth. And he was shaking, but he never spilt one drop. Only the alcoholic can do that. He was shaking, his head and his hands were shaking in unison. So he didn't lose anything. It's just absolutely amazing. But when I saw what was going on in that facility, I had to say, being there from the northwest of England, being there from Europe, being there from comparative wealth, and I grew up in poverty, man, but not poverty like this. I thought, what can I tell these guys? How can I tell these guys what they're doing is wrong? If I was born in and lived in the same set of circumstances that they were born in and lived in, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. I've got no right telling them what they're doing is wrong. I can't do it. And then one of these guys got up off the floor. He was a young lad there, Ashley, a blonde-haired kid. And he had 2 fleas on his leg. And he was using the fleas as a means of entertainment. He was at peace with his fleas, his body lice. Okay? And then Brian gets up and climbs over him, or vice versa. Goes into the kitchen. It was Ashley went into the kitchen for the tea, to make tea for him and Brian. And Ashley shouts to him, Brian, how many sugars do you have? Brian said 5. Okay, now at this point, I'm there to help these guys with their addictions, and I don't know where to start. I don't know where to begin. I really don't feel like I've got any right. Preaching to them, and then going home to a house with a swimming pool and blah, blah, blah. So Ashley shouts, Brian, how many sugars do you want in your tea, mate? Brian said 5, and I thought, here we go, I'll have a go at that. I said, I tell you what, Ashley, man, he can have 2 sugars. And this guy, Brian, on the floor, rough-looking character, a proper rough-looking character. He said, what do you mean, you can have 2? I said, you can have 2. I want 5. I said, I don't care what you want. I'm telling you, you can have 2. Ashley, and I held him, we had eye-to-eye contact, and I thought, one of us is going to get beaten up in a minute, and I've got a funny feeling it might be me. But I held him eye to eye, and I said to Ashley, I just shouted to Ashley, Ashley, 2 sugars. 2 sugars for Brian and 2 sugars for anybody else who wants more than 2. You can have 2 sugars, end of story. Why, what's all that about? So we had a bit of a go at each other. I said, listen, if you can't follow stupid little rules, get out. If you can't follow one simple rule, there's no rules in the house. It was like a dead brothel. There's no rules in the house. I've been asked to come in here and help get you out of the swamp. I've been invited to come into this facility where it stinks to get you out of this cesspool that you're comfortable in. Man's got fleas, man, and he's got names for them. I'm here voluntarily. There's no rules. I'm putting one rule in place. You can only have 2 sugars, and you're pulling your face at it. If you can't stick to, if you can't follow rules because you don't like them, you're never going to get clean and sober, and you will die a hopeless dead leg junkie. And you're not going to die in here. You can go and die in one of those cold doorsteps. And there was this silence. A real loud silence. I stood up to the main guy in the facility and said, if you don't like it, sling it. And we did this eye-to-eye thing. And there's people kind of shuffling away, just putting some daylight between themselves and what looks like it might be a battlefield in the next few minutes. And he said, I hear it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Ashley came through with a cup of tea, 2 sugars in it, and he started drinking it, and we started to chat, and the atmosphere started to kind of wind down. And halfway through his cup of tea, I said to Ashley, how many sugars did you put in the tea? Honestly, how many sugars did you put in the tea? He said, I put 2 in. I said to Brian, how are you enjoying your cup of tea? He said, it's quite nice. But that was the 2 sugar rule. That's called the 2 sugar rule. And that was the only rule we had in a drop-in for dropouts of dying men and women from the most chronic of chemical dependencies. And from the 9 guys who are in that meeting at the moment, as far as I know, 2 of them are dead. I did throw 1 kid out and he died within a week. He was an absolute threat to the community. So I oystered him. I phoned his parents and said he's not staying here with us. I'm not putting up with, for 5 minutes, what you put up with for 15 years. And I said, sling it up, and he was dead within a week. Okay? I did go to the funeral of this guy, and I did stand next to it, in between his mum and dad. I had 1 on each arm, and I explained to them I had to do what was right for my vulnerable community. And we're still friends today, his parents and I. This, where was I going then? Where was I going? It'll come back in a minute. Sometimes my thoughts fly away, and then they come back. After a while, they come back. Sometimes they never come back. But anyway, so that 2 sugar rule. Okay, here we go. Those guys from within that community, 2 of them are dead that I know of. One of them is the young kid I've just been talking about, and the other guy was Brian, the 5 sugar man. And he got maybe 8 or 9 years clean time from the 2 sugar rule. He got clean and sober. He started to become a leader within youth groups. He started to become a group facilitator within addiction treatment homes. He started to be a leader within drop-ins for dropouts. I took him on and gave him a job in my private sector addictions treatment clinic, where he became a key member of a team of clinical specialists. Okay, I had 1 rule for him, man. Don't get involved in romantic relationships, Stay away from romantic relationships until everybody around you agrees that yes, you could add value to anybody's life. And I said to him, would you want your daughter to get involved in a romantic relationship with a guy like you at this moment in time? He said no. I said, right, well, you stay out of everybody else's daughter's life then. Right, okay. And then he said yes, when he meant no. He had eyes for this young bird in the congregation, and they got closer and closer. He's dead now. In fact, he's still dead. He ended up dying, he ended up relapsing, he ended up turning us into the enemy, and he ended up dying from systemic induced heart attack, blood poisoning. He got abscesses on his legs, and the poison went inward. It went systemic, and he died of heart failure. Ironic. Why? 2 sugars. If I say 2 sugars, it's 2 sugars. And let me tell you something else about my silly little rules. I don't have to give you an explanation. You're the one dying in a pit. If I throw a rope down and say grab the rope, you're not going to think twice. If I throw a ladder down and say, get on the ladder, you're not going to think twice. If I say, I'll get you out, but you can only have 2 sugars when you come for lunch, you're not going to think twice. If you start wanting 3 sugars as soon as I leave the building, you're going to relapse. And the overflow of the silly little rule was, men and women of our program get clean and sober or not at the Sugar Bowl. And when you get to the Sugar Bowl and you've got your coffee, you might go to the coffee station at 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody else is asleep. If on your way to the Sugar Bowl you start to think, oh, you're relapsing. That's where you're pregnant with a relapse. As soon as you start to look around to see if you can get away with it, character and integrity is exactly who you are when nobody's looking. So when you get to the Sugar Bowl and you know it's only 2 sugars because there's a sign there, 2 sugars only. If you decide to take a tablespoon, you're relapsing. If you decide to go to the bottom of the Sugar Bowl with your spoon so that you don't spill anything, you're relapsing. You're doing the right things in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. Cut the nonsense, go back to the street. If when you get to the Sugar Bowl, it's just you, there's nobody there, and you look around, just a quick, you're relapsing, man. And the integrity that you do display through the day in front of the eyes of the counsellors, it's exhibitionism, it's compliance. It's absolutely compliance. So from the drop-in for dropouts, where we took care of as best we could with homeless men and women, broken men and women, retired prostitutes, all kinds of diseases and sexually everything that was going on in that little drop-in for dropouts. I used to go home at the end of the day and my fiancée would wash me down. I would go down to my swimming shorts and she would hose me down. I felt like I shaved my head off. I felt like I could feel the light. But nobody knew that. Only I knew that. Okay? I knew I could not tell a man what he's doing is wrong until I could step into his shoes and do what was right. And this is how simple it gets. If there's a silly little rule next to the tea station and you can't adhere to silly little rules because you don't agree with them, you'll never be a leader. It's impossible to be a leader if you can't follow. And what does it take to follow? What does it take to be a leader? I'll tell you. Character and integrity. What does it take to get into recovery? What does it take to truly want to get out of addiction? Character and integrity. What does it take to get you through that initial period of detox and psychological aftershock, the spiritual and psychological turbulence, the mental chaos between active addiction and sober, clean and sober, that window in between? What does it take to get through that window? Character and integrity. What does it take to engage in a recovery program where you've got to be brutally honest? Because those are the simple rules, man. What does it take to follow rules you might not like? Character and integrity. How do you know when you've got character and integrity? Firstly, you will be clean and sober. And secondly, when the speed limit says 30 miles an hour or 60 kilometers an hour, you travel at 29 miles an hour or you travel 59 miles an hour. It says 60 kilometers an hour for a reason. And if you can't put 2 sugars in your coffee when you want 5, you're never going to stick to the speed limit. And the wheels on the bus go round and round, and the wheels on the bus always fall off again. Okay? I'm Colin. I'm going to hand you back to John Stewart now. John Stewart's going to walk you through some material. All right? Please keep the 2 sugar rule in mind. John will lead you from here. He'll refer you back to me, and we're going to get you from where you are, and we're going to get you a little bit closer to where you think you want to be. I say that because when you get clean and sober, it's just going to keep getting better and better and better beyond your wildest dreams. Take care, take care, guys, and God bless you all.